Breaking news: Supreme Court has just delivered a stunning 9-0 unanimous decision that's shaking the nation to its core. In a time when the country seems more divided than ever, all 9 justices, conservative and liberal alike, stood together in agreement. This kind of unity from the highest court is almost unheard of, and the implications are massive. The ruling is set to ripple across all 50 states, touching laws, rights, and debates that have shaped American politics for decades. But what's truly shocking is how deeply this decision could affect the Second Amendment and the balance between federal authority and individual freedom. So what exactly did the court decide, and why are both sides of the political aisle reacting with disbelief? Stay tuned, because this unanimous decision could mark a defining moment for America's constitutional future. This legal battle began in 2021 when the government of Mexico filed an audacious $10 billion lawsuit in federal court in Boston. Their target? 7 major American gun manufacturers, including Smith & Wesson, Glock, Colt, and others. Mexico's claim was stunning in its scope. They argued that these companies were responsible for cartel violence south of the border because traffickers were smuggling firearms from the United States into Mexico. They claimed the manufacturers knowingly facilitated illegal sales and should be held liable for the carnage caused by narco-terrorist drug cartels operating entirely within Mexican territory. The district court initially dismissed the case, citing the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, a bipartisan federal law passed in 2005 specifically to protect American gun makers from frivolous lawsuits that blame them for crimes committed by third parties. But Mexico didn't give up. They appealed to the First Circuit Court of Appeals, which incredibly revived the lawsuit, claiming Mexico's aiding and abetting theory might fall under one of PLCA's narrow exceptions. That's when the case rocketed to the Supreme Court, and after oral arguments in March, the legal world held its breath. After months of anticipation, the Supreme Court finally spoke, and the message was crystal clear. On June 5, 2025, all 9 justices of the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act bars Mexico's lawsuit in its entirety. Writing for the court, Justice Elena Kagan delivered a decision that left no room for interpretation. The court stated that Mexico's complaint was attempting an end run around PLCA, trying to hold American manufacturers responsible for the criminal misuse of firearms by cartels operating thousands of miles away on foreign soil. The court emphasized that PLCA was enacted specifically to stop these kinds of lawsuits' attempts to make gun manufacturers pay for downstream harms caused by those who criminally misuse their product. Mexico hadn't proven that the manufacturers actually aided and abetted illegal gun dealers in unlawful sales to traffickers. Without that crucial link, the lawsuit couldn't survive. But here's where it gets really interesting. Buried in Justice Kagan's opinion is language that Second Amendment advocates are calling game-changing. The court acknowledged that Mexico specifically targeted so-called military-style assault weapons like the AR-15 and AK-47, but then stated plainly that these firearms are widely legal and bought by many ordinary consumers. The opinion even notes that the AR-15 is the most popular rifle in the country. That's not just a throwaway line, that's the Supreme Court of the United States officially recognizing what gun owners have known all along. A 9-0 decision at the Supreme Court is extraordinarily rare, especially on cases touching gun rights. This isn't a 5-4 split or even a 6-3 majority, this is absolute unanimity. When liberal justices like Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson join conservative justices like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito in a gun rights case, you know something monumental has happened. This kind of unity sends an unmistakable message to every lower court in America: the constitutional protections for lawful gun manufacturers are not up for debate. It tells state attorneys general and activist groups that trying to circumvent PLCA through creative legal theories won't fly. It tells foreign governments that they can't use American courts to impose their gun control ideologies on our industries. The legal weight of a 9-0 decision is nearly impossible to challenge or ignore. This isn't just a win, it's a unanimous declaration that the rule of law still means something, and that our Constitution doesn't bend to international pressure or political agendas. Within hours of the ruling, reactions started pouring in from across the political spectrum. While the Department of Justice hasn't issued a formal public statement about the decision, legal experts note that the ruling significantly constrains the federal government's ability to support similar lawsuits in the future. The Biden administration had previously taken positions sympathetic to aggressive gun control litigation, but this unanimous Supreme Court decision makes it clear that PLCA's protections are robust and enforceable. For gun control advocates who had hoped the Mexico lawsuit might open a new avenue to bypass PLCA's shield, this ruling slammed that door shut definitively. Translation? The DOJ and gun control activists know this decision makes it exponentially harder to bring future cases blaming manufacturers for crimes committed with their legally sold product. The frustration is palpable among those who've spent years trying to find creative ways around federal law, and the Supreme Court just told them those efforts are futile. State governments across the nation are now grappling with the implications of this landmark ruling. In Second Amendment-friendly states like Texas, Florida, and Arizona, officials are celebrating the decision as a massive vindication of gun rights and American sovereignty. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton praised the ruling as proof that foreign governments can't dictate American policy, while Florida Governor Ron DeSantis called it a victory for constitutional freedoms and the rule of law. These states see the decision as reinforcement that their pro-Second Amendment policies are on solid legal ground. Meanwhile, officials in restrictive states like California, New York, and Illinois are expressing concerns about what this means for their ongoing efforts to regulate the firearms industry. Gun control advocates in these states worry that the court's recognition of the AR-15's popularity could undercut their assault weapon ban argument. New York's Attorney General warned that the decision could limit states' ability to hold gun manufacturers accountable for the fact that their litigation strategies just got a lot harder. Legal battles are already brewing as states on both sides prepare to test the boundaries of this ruling. Gun rights organizations erupted in celebration when the decision was announced. Gun Owners of America called it a massive victory for United States sovereignty and the Second Amendment, with their senior vice president Eric Pratt declaring that Americans don't answer to globalists or foreign government. He pointed out that Mexico's disarmament policies have empowered cartels and left innocent citizens defenseless, and now Mexico wanted to export that disaster to the United States. The Supreme Court, he said, just told them not on our soil. The Firearms Policy Coalition commended the decision, emphasizing that it protects the American firearms industry from baseless foreign lawsuit. The National Rifle Association praised the court for renouncing the tactics used by Mexico and its American collaborators to try to extort and impoverish America's manufacturers. Perhaps most significantly, these groups are focusing on the court's language about the AR-15 being the most popular rifle in the country. GOA specifically noted that this judicial language could be game-changing in future cases challenging assault weapon bans. With Justice Kavanaugh having already signaled openness to hearing an AR-15 case, advocates believe bans on America's most popular rifle are now on borrowed time. Predictably, mainstream media coverage of the unanimous decision has been mixed to negative, with many outlets framing it as controversial despite the 9-0 vote. Headlines from major networks emphasize the court shielding gun makers rather than focusing on the rule of law or constitutional protections. Some articles highlighted concerns about cartel violence without mentioning Mexico's own corruption and disarmament failures. Commentary pieces questioned whether PLCA is too broad, even as the Supreme Court unanimously affirmed its application. Online, the public reaction has been deeply divided along predictable lines. Second Amendment supporters are calling this a historic victory for liberty and sovereignty, flooding social media with celebrations and renewed calls to defend gun rights. On the other side, gun control advocates express frustration and fear, warning that the decision will lead to more gun violence despite the fact that manufacturers aren't the ones committing crimes. But here's what can't be ignored: the people are paying attention. This isn't a niche legal issue flying under the radar. Americans on both sides understand that this case was about whether our courts could be weaponized by foreign powers to undermine constitutional right. And the Supreme Court just drew a line in the sand. So what happens next? This decision now sets powerful precedent that every lower federal court must follow. The PLCA's protections are now unambiguously clear, which means similar lawsuits attempting to hold manufacturers liable for third-party criminal misuse are dead on arrival. But the implications go far beyond this single case. Several ongoing cases across the country involve challenges to magazine capacity limits, so-called assault weapon bans, and firearm registration requirements. The Supreme Court's explicit recognition that AR-15s are in common use and widely legal could be devastating to states trying to ban these firearms. Under the Supreme Court's established framework from District of Columbia v. Heller and New York Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, firearms in common use for lawful purposes are protected by the Second Amendment. If the AR-15 is officially the most popular rifle in the country, as the Supreme Court just acknowledged, then bans on these rifles are constitutionally suspect at best. Legal experts predict we'll see a wave of new challenges to state-level gun bans, all citing this decision's language. The ripple effect could fundamentally reshape the landscape of Second Amendment litigation for the next decade. Tonight's unanimous ruling proves something rare and powerful even in a deeply divided country: the Constitution still stands above politics. For gun owners and defenders of freedom across America, this is more than just a win in court. This is validation that the principles our founders enshrined in the Bill of Rights aren't negotiable, aren't up for foreign approval, and aren't subject to the whims of activist lawsuit. Mexico tried to use our legal system to blame American companies for violence caused by their own failed policies and cartel corruption. They lost 9-0, with every justice agreeing that American sovereignty and constitutional rights matter. But make no mistake, the fight isn't over. Gun control advocates are already regrouping, looking for new angles and new strategies. More cases are coming, more challenges lie ahead, and the battle to preserve the Second Amendment continues every single day. That's why it's crucial to stay informed, stay engaged, and stand proud in defense of our right. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss an update on the cases that matter most. Share this video with everyone who cares about freedom. And remember, tonight, America just reminded the world what justice looks like when the Constitution is taken seriously. The Supreme Court spoke, and they spoke with one voice. Our rights are not for sale, and they're certainly not subject to approval from foreign governments. This is history in the making, and we're all witnesses to it. Stay strong, stay informed, and never stop fighting for the freedoms that make this nation exceptional.